My website where this broadcast originates from is theglobalreality.com. That's theglobalreality.com. Up there, you'll find all things pertaining to my work. This is our 5-year anniversary this month. Yeah, baby. Happy birthday to us. My goodness. 5 years on air. It's strange because, in a way, it feels much like it's much longer than that. And in a way, it doesn't feel like it's been that long. You know what I mean? Kind of a strange thing. And that's what I hear happens after you do anything long enough, you know. And I've been doing this kind of stuff, and I've been involved in this kind of research and whatnot for so many years now that it's hard for me to remember a time when it wasn't there. Because even when I, wasn't as hardcore as I started to become about 10 years ago or so, I started to become pretty hardcore. But up until that point, I had just been, casual interest. Not that I didn't already know quite a bit, but I didn't know near as much as not as near as much as I do now, or as much as I did before I started the show, for a fact. But I talked about this in the little introduction audition thing for the Discovery Networks that I did the other night for this TV show they're interested in having me on. And one of the things because they wanted to know, kind of my story and that whole thing. So, and I've talked about this many times on the show, and it's absolutely true. The greatest thing that ever happened to my research and my own personal knowledge and my own personal quest for these, because that's, bottom line, that's what this started out as, and that's what, for me, it always will be. It's great to be able to have more people than just yourself along for the ride, like you guys are. That's the other reason why I started doing this show as well. But really, it's just an extension of my continuation. And nothing better ever happened for my research than doing this show. Had I not started doing this show, I would be, gosh, there's no telling how far behind I'd be. I don't know. I'd probably be at least a few years behind where I am now. No way would I have gotten to the level that I'm at now if I had just, kept on just being a regular dude nobody knew and just amassing all this knowledge. But that got to me for a while, I was really frustrated for a long time. I felt that I had all these years worth of research and knowledge building up and building up and building up, and eventually, I needed a release of that. But it was funny how quick it took me when I first started doing this radio show in 2007, September 2007. It was funny how, I thought, wow, I got years worth of radio show stuff to talk about. That was my attitude going into it. I've got years worth of stuff to talk about. Well, my my years worth of stuff to talk about got its load blown after the first month. Literally. But luckily in that time, that was when I had first found out about the Council for National Policy and started studying that. So it was this just wild, insane, amazing, synchronistic thing that happened where, over the course of doing the radio shows I did the first month or month and a half I was on air, I basically went through my entire catalog. You know what I mean? I did my act. That was my act. I had about a month and a half worth of material, and I blew my load, and that was it. I had nothing else left to talk about. So the CMP stuff and the implications of it and the information I was finding out inadvertently gave me this whole new wide spectrum of things to talk about. And, I mean, a lot of you out there probably take for granted, the deeper elements and the deeper things I talk about on the show. There was a time on my show where I didn't talk about stuff that was this deep because it wasn't accepted. And, in fact, I can remember, talking about certain topics, Freemasons and Anunnaki stuff, like back in 2007, 2008. And boy, I mean, something's just milquetoast really now. Really was that long ago, but it shows you how far, a lot farther along we have come, because those subjects that were just kookville. And I was given the impression by most of the people that were on the networks I was on at that time that, you weren't going to last long if you were going to talk about that kind of stuff. And, just being who I am and who I've always been, if you tell me that, it's just going to make me want to talk about it more. And so I did get interested in it for a time, but didn't, but didn't really get into that level of it. Stayed sort of talking about the CMP stuff and politics and government crap and all that stuff for a long time. And then I started noticing, and people that ran the networks I was on at that time started noticing, they would notice that every time that I started to talk about Freemasons, the Illuminati, secret societies, esoteric topics, occult symbology, spirit world stuff, anytime I started talking about those topics, every time like clockwork, the numbers of listeners on the stream would start to go through the roof. And this went on for a few months until and then I'd have some days where I wouldn't talk about those things. And the numbers would drop off. But still, there was this thing where, I was kind of getting some crap, considered the weird guy. We're talking about some of these things. I mean, we're talking about milquetoast stuff like, the Anunnaki and stuff, even chemtrails and stuff like that. UFOs were completely off limits. But I started noticing every time I talked about this stuff, it was just the stream, the numbers would go up, go crazy, and go ballistic. And then other times when I wouldn't talk about it, they would drop off. And so one day I just said, fuck it. If this is what people want to hear, then, I should try to start talking about this stuff more. So what I ended up doing, my strategy was, at that time I did my show 3 hours a day, Monday through Friday. And I just started doing this thing on Friday. I would call it Free for All Friday. And that would be the day of the week I would do news and other stuff the rest of the week. But on Free for All Friday, that would be the day when I would just go balls out and just talk about the deeper topics all day long. So I was able to eventually be able to find a way to make that a regular part of the show. And then later was able to incorporate it more and more. And once I got on my own and I was being independent and having my own network, it would just open the doors for everything. So, a lot of you people who haven't been listening very long, I think a lot of you don't know how good you have it sometimes with my show. My show was not always as good as it is now back a couple of years ago, because, I was still learning, and there's just, things were a lot different then. But I'm really, really glad that I decided, not really like I had much choice, because that was just, I was just responding what people wanted to hear. But at the same time, because I was researching the CMP stuff so much, I didn't really have time to dedicate to researching sort of that other end of it with the Anunnaki stuff and Sumerian texts. I mean, I knew a bit about it, knew some, wasn't completely uneducated about it, but I had focused more on the other stuff for so many years. And then it gradually, because of my investigation into the priest class, the origins of the priest class, as soon as I started finding out about the CMP and its connections to Rome, its connections to the highest upper echelons, Opus Dei, all these different Roman Catholic religious groups, high-level people, and I had established that those people had their tentacles in the highest levels of all governments in the world. Once that was established, my impetus was to start finding out, okay, well, let's start going back in time here. How long's this been going on? What are the connections to it? What have they been involved in? And it's just a massive web I'll probably never untangle. There's so much information. But as I kept going back and back and back into the origins of control and the origins of the religious tentacles entering its way into all levels of our lives, that inevitably led me to the origins of the priests. And the origins of the priests led me back to ancient civilizations. And when I started reading, I mean, we're talking mainline stuff. You can go look at like Library of Congress stuff. If you go to the Library of Congress's website and search Sumeria or Sumer, ancient Sumer, there's some stuff on there that's official, as mainstream as you can get, opinion on stuff from ancient Sumeria, and you'll read it and you'll go, wow, this sounds like conspiracy theory. And most people, that was most people, including myself at that time, most people don't realize, because right there it says, they had a society in one shot, one try, literally overnight, that nobody can explain how. This society didn't just come up over years and years of development as we think most of our agrarian societies have. No, it came up straight up out of nowhere in one fell swoop, one shot, and had it all right and perfect and had a fully working society as if somebody just transplanted it from somewhere else. So when I found out that in the days of the ancient civilization, Sumeria, Akkadia, Assyria, Babylon, that in those days you didn't have Parliament and, Congress and the House of Lords or the Senate and, President, Vice President. You had the priests. And the way that the priests became priests from the very beginning was because, for whatever reason, these individuals at the beginning were chosen to be the carriers of the information and knowledge and the communicator between mankind and the so-called gods. And of course, because this has been going on so long, it's the perfect explanation for how and why, and to me, the perfect proof of who's really running the show worldwide. Because no matter if you look at all of the possible suspects, right, for who's been controlling world events, steering world events, and who's been doing it the longest, it is absolutely, positively, unequivocally the priests and the priest classes, the priestly classes of people who from the very beginning of time were given access to information that was the ultimate double-edged sword. And again, as I talked about the other night, we're flawed people. Humans are flawed creatures. Ain't one of us ever been or ever will be perfect. And when you put perfect information in the hands of imperfect people, you will always get disaster. You will always get someone who will attempt to use that power to enslave other people to make himself more powerful. So even by mainstream, Library of Congress admission, the very beginning of government started in ancient Sumeria with the priests. That was a revelation to me. So I said, okay, well, now let's start finding out. Now that we've gone back, now let's start moving forward again. And let's start looking at who these priests that started out in ancient Samaria, Acadia, Assyria, Babylon, Egypt, all the areas in that area of the land, of Iran as well, all areas of the Middle East. And where did these priests go? What did they become? What did they evolve into? And when you start looking into that, my God, you can just see the line. So that became a thing for me when I started realizing, oh my goodness, look at the roots of these people in the CMP, and look how many of them are bloodlines, like Phyllis Schlafly. You got bloodline people involved in these priestly classes. That's the priestly classes and the bloodlines, the Merovingian bloodlines, have always been involved in the founding and forming of religion and religious groups from time immemorial. I mean, look at even modern examples. Charles Taze Russell, Watchtower Society, guys buried in a giant fucking pyramid. Merovingian bloodline, as well as Joseph Smith, Brigham Young, the founders of Mormonism. Levite tribes. They go back to, one of the lost tribes of Israel, the Levites. Same clan that Jay-Z throws up his sign to. Yeah, that's funny. Just pissing in the face of the black folks every time he does that. Because they've been kept away from the fact that symbol is a Levite symbol, that Jay-Z hand symbol thing he throws up, vagina symbol, that's a Levite tribe. That goes back to the white priests of Israel, brother man. Yep, sure does. And it's unbelievable to me that he gets away with that. You know what I mean? It really is. But that was really a revelation for me, and that's why when I went to this David Icke thing in 2009, one of his speaking things he did in New Mexico, and his big crescendo grand finale of the show was proceeding to tell all of us there, the Rothschilds are the tip top of the pyramid, mate. You needn't look any further. And I was just like, I'm out of here. Fuck this. I'm not going to be sit here and be pandered to like some idiotic child who can't read for himself when I've spent hours and days and months and years of my life researching this on my own. At that point, 2 years. Solid on the subject, and I'd found all those things out about the priests and the whole origins of the control system on my own to sit there. I'd also known about, went and looked at a copy of the Encyclopedia Judaica myself by that time that said in there the Rothschilds, the Encyclopedia Judaica is the, end-all, be-all of all things Jew. And in there, under Rothschild, it says, guardians of the Vatican's treasury. The Rothschilds only have the power and the wealth and the status they have because they have been the guardians and the bankers for the immense wealth that the priest class has amassed throughout the centuries. And they are the ones that manage that, and through their actions, steer world events, but only at the behest of the priest class controllers who finance them and their activities through the fact that they are their bankers. And when I see every single researcher out there that calls himself a truther leaving out that fact when they talk about who's really in control, I couldn't help but have to try and expose people that did that. The facts are the facts, folks, and if you really do your own research on this, you will find that at the tip top of the pyramid, since time immemorial, it has always been the priests. And the fact that this knowledge appears to have come from, the Nephilim, the Anunnaki, whatever you want to call them, you were never going to get Alex Jones or the rest of these clowns out there to give you that part of the equation. And when you notice that those same priest class people, the Jesuits and the rest of them, have their tentacles in Alex Jones and everything else. Then you understand, oh, my God, this is why they haven't wanted us to go there. This is why they've constantly gotten us to stop at the Rothschilds and not go any farther than that. And that's why they are gatekeepers. So that's really how I got. It was amazing. I mean, like I said, I knew a lot about that kind of stuff, but I knew nothing about the origins of control and how the power of overall humanity originated in the hands of the priests and then was corrupted and used for control. And we still exist under that today. But see, they put out all these red herrings and all these people that sound like they're the highest up in the food chain. And it's not until you do your own research on your own and find out for yourself who's really running things that you go, oh, man, see, then it's a great equalizer. Then you're able to tell really quickly who's telling the truth and who's not. And that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is why they have attempted to marginalize me. That's why not very many radio shows will have me on. Thank God Red Eye does, and they promote my work. Just can't thank them enough. But the whole little thing I just laid out for you, this is why people want to keep me and my work marginalized. Because what I expose not only exposes the origins of control, it also exposes the people who keep the gates for you ever getting that greater context and finding out the bigger picture. So that's how I came. And another way I came into this sort of the ancient civilization stuff and the Anunnaki type stuff. Another way I came into that too was, I'd exposed some of the stuff about Aaron Russo and his Rockefeller connection in The Secret Right, Volume 2. And I had remembered that conversation with Nick Rockefeller that Aaron Russo had described about, there was going to be an event in 2001 and it was going to be used to do all the things they did after 9/11. And then later on it was going to be Iran and then Venezuela after Iraq and Afghanistan and all that stuff. And a lot of people, that kind of went all over people's heads, but I really keyed in on that. And after I had learned about the looting of the Baghdad Museum, in which that was another big thing I keyed in on I was like, wow, another just coincidence here. How come you don't hear Alex Jones talking about that? Just coincidence. The first thing they did after they sold us the lie of 9/11 was to invade the Baghdad Museum. Special Forces goes in, blows the doors off the vault, and gets all these little, the little reptilian statues, alien statues, all these ancient Sumerian texts and tablets. Then the stuff started coming out about Saddam Hussein calling himself Nebuchadnezzar and rebuilding Babylonian temples and starting this library with all this ancient knowledge in it. And then a light bulb went off. I started thinking about that Russo statement. I said, well, okay. If there's any truth in that, and there is truth in this, what we know about the looting of the Baghdad Museum, then that would pretty much put us on the track to be looking at wherever theaters of war are going to be taking place, there must be high levels of antiquities in those locations. So I started researching that. I started in Iran first and was completely blown away to find out about the Behistun inscription inscribed to King Darius. Talks about all the bloodline rulers ruling over this land forever. And, found out about the rich cultural and archaeological history in Iran, because the people who inhabit that land now are considered a mongrel people. They're not considered the original inhabitants. The original inhabitants of Iran were the Aryans. That's what the term Iran comes from. Darius was, it was an Aryan, and that's what this Behistun inscription is ascribed to and described by. It's signed at the bottom. It's inscribed at the bottom to Zeus from Queen Semiramis. Kid you not. It's carved on the side of a mountain in Iran. And then, I started finding out who King Darius was and found out about his connection to Merovingius Merovi and how he spawned the Merovingian bloodline long before it was ever even around. Darius is depicted on a flying winged disc on the side of this mountain on this Behistun inscription in Iran. I found out all that stuff. I was like, oh, my God. No wonder they've been beating the war drums. They want to go into Iran for the antiquities and stuff there. Then I started looking at Venezuela. Okay, well, that's not even in the Middle East, so there can't be anything there. Then I started, they have the, the gateway to the sun, and all these, artifacts, ancient, the big monolithic structures and stuff they have there. And that's when it occurred to me that the reason why all these countries with rich archaeological heritage are now being considered terrorist countries. We found out later that the Ark of the Covenant is said to be in Yemen, and I said back in 2009, watch, that's where they'll be telling us Al-Qaeda is next, and sure enough, that's what happened. And then meanwhile, you start seeing the religious connotations of these artifacts and how they relate to really the real story that's been kept from us by the priest class, and then it all just made sense. The Blackwater, just all the stuff that they've done over there, raping and pillaging and destroying, and then finding out about Eric Prince and his, family being Catholic, and they name all their vehicles the Templar 1 and the Crusader 2, and then you find out that the origins of Special Forces, where the origins of Special Forces to this day originates back from? You can go and find this. It's out there in mainstream sources. They don't deny it. The Special Forces, ladies and gentlemen, SF, originated with the Templars. And what did they do? They raped and pillaged Solomon's temple for the secrets that he had. And all the magical stuff, they're from the Goetia and all that there. And then who got that later? That's right. Rome, Catholic Church. They absorbed all the information from the Templars that came from Solomon's temple into their hierarchy. And then it all became clear to me, my God, this is why nobody wants to talk about this CMP thing. That's why nobody wants to address who the real controllers are. That's why everybody wants to blame it all on Jews, because they don't want us to see who the real controllers are, because it opens up this whole area of research and information and hard questions that need to be asked. And it makes all the people who aren't asking those same questions be exposed as the frauds they are. Because this is no joke, folks. I had to find all this out from years and years of research. You're lucky in getting it all condensed here for you in 30 minutes of radio. I mean, this is what I've been doing the past 5 years here on this show.